The world we lived in was destroyed. A portal opened out of nowhere, spitting out monsters non-stop. Since then, humans have had to fight monsters to survive, and our protagonist has lived that way his entire life. So passed a day, a month, a year, 10 years. With his sword, he cut down every monster that stood before him. He was not afraid. Then that thing arrived, a gigantic monster possessing a great presence which demands the warrior's surrender. After all, that world he knew had already disappeared, the monster claims. Our blonde warrior remains silent and listens to the beast that offers the boy to become his sword and join him. Annoyed, the boy shouts and charges with rage to begin the combat. He jumps and rises above the enemy, passing right by its side, dodging and wounding the monster and its fist. The thing is not surprised. Our boy twists in the air to not lose sight of the beast, but is forced to dodge a powerful blow from it. However, he fully receives a knee strike that sends him flying, causing him serious injuries. The monster mocks him. No matter how much attack you withstand, you won't stop being just another kind of insect. The warrior gathers momentum and launches himself into the attack again. He approaches the enemy, who seemed not to react, until it lifted one of its arms, with its aura indicating the overwhelming power of the coming blow, and as if it were a simple game, strikes the boy, sending him straight to the ground. On his knees was our friend, while the imposing adversary is completely unscathed, posing with his enormous sword, long hair, and a striking necklace around his neck, a necklace that catches our boy's attention. He quickly prepares upon seeing his rival throw his sword back and charge a powerful attack to finish him off. He prepares his own weapon and launches it with all his strength, piercing the beast's chest, clearly interrupting the attack that was mere millimeters from hitting his head. It turns out the necklace was split along with the monster's chest. It itself, upon noticing, curses the bastard for having done it, while the boy was staggering, exhausted. The necklace began to emit a light, causing the monster to scream in pure rage as it is lifted and disintegrated with an impressive halo of light. Thus the young swordsman lay on the ground after his victory. He has lost a lot of blood. He gazed at the beautiful view unfolding before him for the last time, slowly closes his eyes, while what seemed to be a shooting star streaks across the sky. And that is it, the god of the sword from a destroyed world. From there we go to some place, to some point in time before everything went to hell. There is someone walking through the streets of a big city, a black-haired boy dressed casually with an unfriendly face. A small alarm sounds announcing he had arrived at a gate called the Nazan Gate, a C-rank place, which is recommended to enter with at least 3 people together. This boy hears as the security system requests his hero registration and identification, as civilians are strictly forbidden from entering this place. The young man lifts his legs and kicks open the gates, causing a major alarm to activate, and it announces the forced entry of an unregistered hero, with his face recorded on the security cameras. The boy slipped through the forest, and as he advances is stopped by a voice calling him. He turns to find himself with a group of heroes. One of them kindly asks if perhaps the young man was lost, offers his help to take him to the exit, as they were actually already leaving the place. The boy just looks at them, does not respond. That and his blank expression make the hero uncomfortable. In turn, the big guy and the girl wonder about the young man's clothing. Maybe he isn't a hero like them, though of course, a porter or a collector could dress however they wanted. This guy, they say literally, is dressed casually as if coming from school carrying his backpack, and they conclude that he was abandoned for being useless. To all this, the boy finally speaks to say no, that he just arrived and that they shouldn't pay attention to him, to ignore him. A hero says yes, they definitely left him behind for being useless. He is interrupted by the apparent leader of the group. He had already seen several people like him. "Obviously you snuck in here," says the leader, thinking that being here must be something easy after seeing it on the internet or television. "You should get a license by passing the exam and training, and then enter through an F-rank gate, not start with a C-rank one like this." The boy says he understands the concern and thanks for the help, but no one asked you for it and no one asked you. Well, he doesn't say that, but he should have told them. Anyway, he says it's not necessary for them to help him. These 3 were awkwardly surprised. 2 of them get a bit upset and are calmed by their leader saying it's fine. If the boy wants to ignore the advice, he could go. He'll experience and learn firsthand that being here isn't like what he sees in videos. This place can get brutal. The boy advances, and it didn't take long for him to run into a huge orc. Both exchanged glances. While one growls, the other removes and sets aside his backpack, closing his eyes calmly. The furious orc attacks. The boy opens his eyes saying 10 years have passed, disappears for an instant from the beast's sight, jumps and attacks with a powerful punch that launches and completely disappears the monster's head. Just like that, the confrontation had ended, the corpse falling causing a puddle of blood, and we see the young man finishing saying that 10 years have passed and absolutely nothing has changed. There on the ground he sees something and picks it up, that orc's sword that seemed quite sharp, therefore it would serve him to cut, and cut what, you may wonder? Well, the flesh of this monster's corpse, searching its entrails until finding a low-quality magic stone. Normally he wouldn't even glance at this type of so low-quality stone, but still he opens his backpack and stores it. Then he feels a small movement behind him, resulting to be the footsteps of more orcs, a group that without a moment's hesitation attacks him. He ducks the first attack, and with the same magic stone hits an orc's head, completely exploding it. The others continued drawing their weapons while they are awaited very calmly. Elsewhere with the group from before, the girl mentions the young man, questioning what would happen if he really dies. Her companion asks if perhaps she's worried about that guy. Their leader says that if that boy really had forced his way in, the control center agents should be looking for him right now. After all, this is a C-rank dungeon. Surely they'll send B-rank or higher agents after him. As long as the boy doesn't run into a monster, he should be fine, so there's nothing to worry about. The big guy on the team says he's right. The agents will go save the imbecile who is surely trembling, hiding somewhere. And we see that the only one really trembling is this orc who just received the blow of its life. Another orc attacks from behind. He dodges it, and not even the poor orc knows what happened. The young man is about to receive another blow, but out of nowhere he goes and kicks the orc in the back of its neck, falling dead next to its companion. The boy takes the sword and prepares to examine 3 more bodies. After a while, hunting and killing monsters, the backpack was completely filled with magic stones, most low or mid-low level. In the background, someone running stops short and radios his companions. And in seconds, they all approach the young man. Finally, the agents had arrived. The agent introduces himself. They are from the control center. They come to request identification and hero registration because he didn't provide them at the entrance. The boy wonders what control center this guy is talking about. The agent repeats his order. He receives a serious look from the boy, only to turn around and walk as if they weren't there. The agent gets annoyed and asks his partner to handcuff the boy before he leaves. He obeys and takes out the handcuffs, approaches, and tells him that if necessary, he will use brute force, taking the young man's hand. He tells him if he gets hurt, it won't be the agent's responsibility. It's better to do it peacefully. The protagonist holds him and easily pushes him aside, causing the agent to shit himself from fright, and also asks them to stop bothering him and to simply go back the way they came. 12 agents seeing this prepare and draw their special batons with a 4th-grade jaw design. It was something interesting but would only work against orcs, thinks the protagonist. He twists the arm of the agent he had hold of, making the poor man scream. He tells them, "Listen to me, I'm not going to warn you anymore. If you don't want to get hurt, simply leave." Both ignore the protag's words and lunge at him, being easily blocked with a simple arm movement. He avoids the blow by tilting his head, instantly moves his leg and counterattacks with a knee strike to the ribs, leaving the poor agent completely doubled over, and without pause positions himself again to kick the other agent, sending him flying. The group leader watches as his companions were humiliated without him being able to do anything to prevent it. The protag looks at him. Using his speed, he disappears from the man's sight, attacking him directly from the front. The agent manages to stay on his feet and takes a step back, trying to recover. The protag takes advantage and asks playfully if there's still a problem for not having hero registration. And of course the agent, catching the hint immediately, says that no, there won't be any problem. But the boy asks, "And what about the Rift Zone?" And here, so that we understand everything, he explains that the dimensional passages had appeared all around the world, and as the hunting products that heroes obtain are used as an energy source, the state began to control and put tolls on areas where monsters are locked up, such as the gates, and those places that still remain without government controls. They are not gates, but are called rift zones. So the protagonist asks if every time he enters a gate they are going to come looking for him. Is it because it's trespassing or something like that? The pained agent responds that is correct. If someone without authority enters any gate, it is reported and agents are sent immediately. The agent says that entering a rift zone is not like sneaking through a normal gate. The Hero Association wouldn't let something like that pass easily. Annoyed, the boy approaches and takes the agent's face, thinking if that's how things were, then that's how it should be. The agent thinks he should have notified the center when he had the chance. Gathering momentum, the protag throws him to the ground, disappointed at not having found anything special in this place. He decides to leave at once, leaving the poor agent injured there who swore he would get revenge. He swears he would kill him someday. A light appears and we see the previous events again. The necklace breaking, that gigantic monster. Again, we are with that blonde warrior floating in a kind of space, still remembering the scream of that damned monster dying. The warrior thinks this feeling of losing consciousness. Oh right, it must be that he's dead. But no, he believes it's not about death. Slowly he opens his eyes, being upside down in a place with clouds. He wonders who the person in front of him is. This boy soon introduces himself as Seo Dong-jun. With blood on his chest, Dylan says sadly that he is dying. This boy asks the warrior to grant him a request so he can leave this world in peace. The warrior does not respond directly. The boy gets embarrassed. The warrior tells him that right now he is tired after having a shitty life full of remorse. He spent his life fighting monsters, was betrayed by a very close companion, and his home had been completely destroyed. His friends, family, all died, even those who lived in luxury and who gave him his life as a reward. Nothing. You feel the same, don't you? Asks the warrior. The young man responds that it's okay. He didn't mind dying like that. He only hopes his loved ones who are still alive can continue living comfortably. These words confuse the warrior, making him ask the boy not to beat around the bush and to ask exactly what he wants from him. This interest makes the young man happy, and being totally honest, he says that what he wants is. But we do not manage to hear or rather read what he wanted to tell him. So we return to the present in the same big city. There were many shops related to gate products. We see the protag walking down the street seeing which shop to enter. Once inside, he is greeted with a welcome. The protag asks if in that place they buy magic stones. The seller says that is correct. They had the most competitive prices in the city. So then the boy begins to empty his backpack onto the counter, surprising the seller who thought it would only be a couple of stones. The boy asks the protagonist to please wait seated a moment and have a coffee so he can sort and calculate the prices of each magic stone. A while later, he finally calculates that with 12 low-quality stones, 16 medium quality and 5 high quality, subtracting the 40% fee, it would total 5.5 million. The protag interrupts him and approaches complaining because, how is it a 40% fee? He was the one who hunted and brought the stones while the shop only buys them. It makes no damn sense. The seller tells him he really doesn't know anything. Normally they ask for a 45% fee, which is tax. But in this shop they ask for 40% simply because they are the best. If he didn't want to sell them, he could go to another shop. No matter where, he won't get a better price, says the seller. To this, the protag literally says, okay, I'm leaving, as he puts his stones back in the backpack. Then the manager begins to demand payment for having appraised his stones, even though he hasn't sold them. He asks for 300,000 won for the classification. He asks for 300,000 euros for the classification, and another 10,000 for the coffee. He suggests he better pay before he calls the C-rank heroes he has guarding the shop. At that moment, the door behind the counter opens. Coming out from inside is a group of heroes. The gray-haired one asks the seller what he wanted. What's the damn problem? Our protagonist looks seriously at the guy, and he returns the look with curiosity. The sweating merchant begins to hide, seeing how the security hero is thrown onto the table, having received a sharp blow from the protagonist. The 3 security guys didn't last even 5 seconds. The protagonist approaching and intimidating the seller says he should stop wasting time. The fee would be 1%, a truly fair deal. Finally, he sells the stones and leaves the shop. Arriving at his house, the protag throws a large wad of bills on the floor, surprising a grandmother and a little girl. Hesitantly, the lady asks how he got that amount of money. The boy responds that it's his share after investing in a friend's successful business. The grandmother asks if he really has such a friend. To this, the protagonist remembers the place where he was raised and mentions that it's a friend from back then. I know, she says, looking sadly at the money. The excited little girl asks if they would be rich for a while. Stroking her head, he responds that of course they will be rich now and also in the future. Happy, she begins to run around the room celebrating. Watching her so happy, the protag remembers what the boy had told him at that moment. He had asked him to please take care of his grandmother and his sister, that they deserved to live safely and well. At that instant, without him being able to respond, he simply disappeared. And apparently the protagonist indirectly accepted his request, unintentionally on purpose, since upon waking he found himself here in Dylan's body. The protagonist's plan is to move them to a safer house. Researching, he discovered that the safest house in Madrid, Spain, costs 110 million euros, and while there is no obligation for him to fulfill that boy's request, if he manages to recover his real strength, That sum of money would be practically nothing for him. The protagonist thinks, rifts, portals, and fucking monsters. His home was destroyed because he was weak. And right now this world is like a game for a sword god like him. Still, he doesn't even have 10% of his power with him. These thoughts are interrupted by someone knocking on the door calling for our prodag. He leaves his sister and gets up to attend to whoever is looking for him. Opening the door are two men, who immediately remind him that he must pay the borrowed money he owes. The other insists that he remember it's about 48 million euros. The boy sighs, recognizing those guys according to this body's memories. These two guys lent 5,000 euros to the previous owner of this body, redundancy aside, so he could pay for the hospital treatments for his grandmother, and after failing to pay, the sum ended up increasing too much. That is, from 5,000 euros they came to owe 48,000. The collectors question if he didn't earn anything going to the rifts. Even if it's little, he should hand over everything according to their contract, and that therefore he shouldn't feel abused. But a punch is what the bigger one of them receives, grazing the other in the process. Confused, the blonde asks what the hell that was. The protagonist tells him that he already paid that debt. In fact, he paid double what they lent him. He paid 10,000 euros instead of 5. At this point, it is they who owe him. Scared, the blonde begins to stutter, but the protagonist, before sending him to sleep, warns that he will soon go visit their boss when he has time. Later at the mall, a teddy bear shop was being eyed by the protagonist's little sister, who couldn't believe she would have a new doll. Her brother calms her. He had already bought a lot of clothes, and still a lot of money is left. She could choose and all the toys she wants. It's something new for him, but by sharing Dylan's memories, he has even begun to develop his own emotions for this little one and her grandmother. However, he thinks it was just sympathy, even though she was only his half-sister. Dylan cared for her very much. At least he would accept protecting that feeling. The little one approaches with a rabbit asking if she could take this one. The boy sees the rabbit and decides to take the big fat bear that his sister had been looking at since they entered the shop. Telling her that he had already told her she could choose everything she liked, thus drawing out a cute, embarrassed smile, they decide to go rest and eat something on the way. Both calm shared the beautiful moment with the fat bear. A voice calls our prodag, a lady with a similar bandage who wonders why the boy dressed so poorly, and who was with him at the table. Did he have a mistake like what happened to his mother? This throws off the protagonist, who is left staring, impacted by what this lady just said out of nowhere. Little Erica wonders who this lady was. The protagonist remains silent while the lady smiles and approaches the little girl who was just eating without understanding anything. The woman asks the girl's name. Erica responds, "It's me." "Are you a liar?" asks the woman. "Look how you're dressed," she tells her. "You're messy, just like your mother," says the bitch, looking at the prodag. She mocks, wondering if he's mute now. Could he not hear either? She looks back at the little girl and with all malice asks her, "Hey brat, do you know what the word means?" This finally makes the protagonist react, who murmurs about the appearance of the chick, making her turn to look at him and notice the disgust on the boy's face. The original Dylan was born in poverty and out of wedlock. At 7 years old, his mother passes away and he is barely able to live with his biological father in a house where they despised him. When his father's second wife had another baby, he was completely abandoned. That's how he ended up living with his grandmother and meeting his half-sister, whom he had never heard of. Dylan thinks the protagonist, "You really had extraordinary will to have endured this shit for so many years. Please," he says, "let me take care of this thing now." Leans toward the lady saying that. Even after 12 years, she still disgusts him. Her appearance is trash, her personality is trash, her stupidity so great it wouldn't even be a possible case to study. She really is just a tremendous inferiority complex and envy towards kind, pretty girls. That's why, compared to her, a little girl who even worries about her older brother's financial state. It's clear she can't compete in any aspect against her, so that's why she insults the girl. Thus standing erect in front of that woman who began to boil with rage upon hearing that reality. Another voice sounds calling the prodag. A beautiful and elegant woman approaches who turns out to be the girl's mother. She begins to beg her mother to do something. "Didn't you hear what Dylan just said to me?" She is silenced by her mother, who, annoyed, points out that, "Stop behaving in such an uncultured manner." Putting that aside, she communicates with Dylan, asking how he had been. And no matter how busy he was, he should go to his father's house more often. Our prodag only thinks that the damn woman is another fake witch. She was the one who tormented Dylan the most when they lived together. She was going to say that his father asks a lot about him, but is interrupted. The prodag tells her without hesitation that, "We are nothing to exchange greetings, so disappear." She remains silent and furiously turns to go back the way she came. Thinking if that really was the same Dylan, that coward she remembered, That's how she leaves with her dreadful daughter, who looks like a 40-year-old lady, and keeps her back turned, being watched by the protagonist and his little sister. He tells her it was time for them to leave too. The protagonist thinks that boy no longer exists, the one who was consumed with fear. It's something that, for their own good, those who used to bother him will have to learn. We cut to the road where the two women were being transported. The daughter questioned the mother for not having done anything and just leaving like that. The mother ignores her and talks with her secretary. She asks why that boy is still alive. The secretary responds that according to the report, Dylan had died. Exactly, she shouts. But why is someone alive who supposedly was already dead? She asks. It is then that her daughter asks what she meant. Her mother crosses her arms, annoyed, and doesn't respond, causing them to ask again. Were you going to kill Dylan? Do you still like that boy? Asks the mother, leaving the girl speechless. She denies it the next instant. If only your grandfather or father were to find out. She is taken by the face by her mother, who whispers to her, I will take care of everything, so shut the fuck up, leaving her trembling. The mother thinks how is it possible that that dirty brat dares to speak to her that way. She's going to take care of him at any fucking cost. In the past, several years ago, a gigantic rift formed. From it came all kinds of weak and powerful creatures. And they did that through the monsters, plunging the whole world into absolute chaos, almost ending everyone and everything. Fortunately for humanity, the emergence of heroes was a glorious stage, where all that chaos and terror was quickly quelled. Behind all that, some new things remained, the mana stones found in the monsters. They replaced traditional energy sources, and this led all countries to concentrate on obtaining such a precious resource. The economy revolves around portals and heroes. In other words, if your goal is to earn money, you should become a hero. The protagonist arrives at a place. He is at the doors of a joint called the Little House. The protagonist enters and, without asking permission, sits down. There was someone smoking there. This guy, with all the arrogance and carefreeness in the world, asks him who he thinks he is to just sit down like that after having beaten up his people. Behind him, we see the two who went to try to collect money from the protagonist. The protagonist says that the more he thinks about it, the more he feels they tricked him, they scammed him. So the time had come for them to pay him, to compensate for the physical, material, and above all mental damages they had caused Dylan. The boss notices he is no longer the same calm boy as before. His attitude did a 180-degree turn. Besides, he beat up two of his men. Surely it's all because he got an awakening in some portal. He shouts in the protagonist's face, asking him if he thinks he's hot shit for having gotten an awakening, if he doesn't know what happened to the majority of those boys who, like him, got one. Don't you know what happened to them? The door bursts open, a group of men appears and stands next to our protagonist, looking at him as if he were a worm. The boss continues. Most brats who get an awakening end up being failures. They all remain stuck at D rank. And do you want to know why? Well, these boys are D rank heroes who are going to explain it to you in a friendly manner. They are going to explain to you why you shouldn't have spoken to me in that tone, as he gets up to leave. That attitude annoys the protagonist, who tells him to sit down. He hasn't finished talking with him. The thug shoves him aside, shouting. He tells him how he dares to be so neither respectful nor arrogant. The boy takes the glasses and removes them. Then he lands a punch that sends him to the corner of the room. Without giving him a chance to react, he slaps another one of them, putting him to sleep. Finally, one of the thugs tries to take a step back to get into guard. But our boy gets directly in front of him, thus connecting another powerful blow. He dodges the last one's attack due to the huge level difference, and as expected, manages to finish him with a single blow. Now with all those thug heroes on the floor, the protagonist tells the boss that he heard around that not only are they small-time loan sharks, but they also usually fabricate fake hero identifications, so he wants one. He must make sure it's perfect. He needs to earn money. So he needs it for tomorrow. With this display of power, the boss was shocked. Besides those two cowards who were sweating like pigs, the boss wondered if that was the power of a C-class. But it can't be. Maybe it's the power of a B-class. Scared and bowing his head, the loan shark reluctantly accepts the boy's order. Still, he is gently grabbed by the shoulder. The protagonist had something to ask him. Was it the lady called Joe who hired you to have him killed? The loan shark remembers that woman's figure. And as he doesn't respond, the boy tightens his grip, causing him terrible pain. Making him spit out the words, he says yes. It was she who ordered him to overwhelm him with debts so he would get depressed and end up sacrificing his own life. The protagonist stops to think about it for a moment. The guy shouts for him to let go and have mercy on him. Then he asks if that was the reason why they threw him into the portal. But the lone shark denies knowing anything about that. He didn't order anything having to do with portals. The guy gets on his knees begging. He says why would he want to throw him into one of the portals and kill him? If anyway he couldn't recover the money that he had lent him previously. Searching Dylan's memories, he remembers a man, the person who threw him. Pedro, it was he who threw him. He asks the lone shark to get all the information possible from that day, all for tomorrow, having finished his business. For now, he proceeds to leave without further problems. As he walks, he remembers the words of the young Dylan, asking only for protection for those two precious women, his sister and grandmother. The protagonist believes Dylan is truly someone with great worth. With so many things happening in his life, he only thought about protecting his family. But he shouldn't worry anymore. Now he is here, and he will take care of resolving everything. Since then, a few days have passed. Now the protagonist has his precious hero identification, which he has used to earn money finishing off monsters. He was fighting two enormous serpents, with some kind of hooks on their tongues. They attack together, but the protagonist tears the magic stone directly out of one of them, while the other turns sharply to try to chase the protagonist, who already knew he couldn't let himself be touched by their poison, or he would be completely paralyzed. He falls onto one of the walls and changes direction to propel himself again, and strikes several parts of the serpent, making it be easily cut. A bit of the poison falls on the protagonist's hand, who doesn't regret having spent 300,000 won on those combat gloves. Turning around, he notices a horde of serpents approaching. He begins to destroy them one after another, making them fly everywhere, and scattering their leaders of poison in all directions. Finally remaining standing within a circle of corpses, poison and blood, he puts his hand into the body searching for the magic stones. He really hasn't gotten many from these serpents. He thinks that if this world is similar to the one he comes from, these black fang serpents must have a 3% drop rate. This is a bit frustrating, but he decides to go ahead and kill a couple hundred more to get an acceptable haul. He goes down a corridor, which opens a door that lets him into a room full of people's corpses, apparently dead in combat. The protagonist says that apparently this is the boss. He had no idea where he was going, but he's glad to run into him. He'll finish this quickly and get out of here. He jumps at this gigantic serpent. He tries to kill it with a single blow, being completely surprised and repelled. His blow was barely able to mark the surface of that thing. The boss approaches with its body quickly and manages to land a powerful attack, burying the protagonist, who barely begins to get up. Is attacked again, this time with a bite. He manages to dodge it. In this last movement, he plants his foot and advances, delivering another blow with more force than the previous one. But he realizes the creature was abusively superior to the normal serpents outside. His blows won't do anything against it. What could he do? He doesn't possess the strength of his previous life yet. If he did, this wouldn't even be a fight. The protagonist turns, noting that his foot had accidentally kicked. A sword stuck in the ground next to a corpse. He looks at it and closes his eyes, pained, but decides to take it from the corpse. No matter how much it's trash, it was the only option. Besides, it's not the size or condition of the sword, but the skill of the one who wields it. He takes a step forward and prepares. It's the great serpent who attacks first. The protagonist, who jumps again, passes over the boss, telling it that, "Consider it an honor to be killed by me, you disgusting serpent." He uses the sword. He tilts it while being attacked again. This time the boss has no time to react, when it is tired from the powerful sword skill the protagonist possesses, making it already be split by a powerful slash in milliseconds. That had to have been enough. Otherwise, things would have gotten complicated. Since the sword blade ended up breaking into 1,000 pieces, finally seeing the boss's body, he decides to tear out one of its fangs. It might be short for a sword, but with enough refinement it will be useful. The work of hunting seems to bother the protagonist. Still, he is relieved to remember that at least that income the more he advances. At night, now leaving, he thinks he is wasting too much time in B-rank gates. His priority right now is to recover his former power. He remembers his old companions from the past, thinking that at least they aren't watching him in these so humiliating moments. In downtown Madrid, inside a shop, we see a middle-aged hero selling magic stones. The one attending him congratulates him for having gotten so many stones again. However, that hero questions if a 40% commission wasn't a scam. Couldn't they give him a discount for being a regular customer? That merchant asks why he complains when his shop is the one that charges the least. On average, the other shops charge 45% and are more expensive. Besides, this leaves no record of the transactions. They avoid paying more taxes. Taking all that into account, he gets a greater profit with us. The man accepts that the seller was right with the math, but looking well at the merchant's face, he asks what the hell happened to his face. Just a few days ago, he was normal and now full of wounds with a black eye. He recounts how a bastard came to the shop looking for trouble, attacked the shop guards and, in passing, the civilian in charge of it. The hero finds this somewhat ironic, because they lowered their guard by being overconfident. They didn't have to hire heroes just for their ranks, and not because they should have looked at their skills as fighters. Putting people who just got their hero license doesn't compare to those with experience killing monsters. The merchant, listening to all that, comments he's fed up with the lecture. No one asked for his opinion, old man, and they had already finished negotiating. The man finally finishes speaking with the suggestion that they call him if they need help again. On the way out, the man runs into someone, turning out to be the protagonist who was returning looking for business. Scared, the manager immediately points at the boy, shouting that it was him. That was the one who had caused problems in the shop. The hero, upon hearing this, doubts this information. Really, a tall, handsome young man could cause such a ruckus. Anyway, he snaps his fingers, threatening the protag about stopping causing trouble. A hero can't go around hitting innocent people or civilians. The manager thinks that this time the boy will get his due. This man wasn't like the shop guards, but a hero with 7 years of experience. "Mind your own business and don't fuck around," responds the protag to the poor old man, making him get angry and delighting the merchant. The protagonist continues, "What's your problem? Are you going to take revenge for the shop?" This ticks off the old man, who clenches his fists. But he thinks better of it. The main cause of death among heroes are direct confrontations between themselves. Not even from fighting monsters do so many die. Apparently, his years of experience taught him that it's better to avoid problems. Luckily, he preferred not to get into others' problems. Now, only with no one to protect him, it's time to do business again. The protag throws his bag full of magic stones, asking the manager to hurry up calculating the price. This time, the merchant is surprised. These weren't like the previous ones. These are all high-rank stones. While calculating, he questions who that boy is supposed to be, after adding all the amounts for a total of 150,000 euros. The protag thinks it was a waste of time spending all day hunting just for that amount of money. To all this, the manager, trembling under the boy's gaze, reminds him it would be a little less due to the commission. Unconcerned, the young man remembers that according to the agreement they have between them, the commission is only 1%. This makes the manager about to hit the protagonist. He shouts at him that enough is enough of the abuse. Of course, all that he thought and didn't say out loud. He resorts to the excuse of needing his boss's permission for transactions over 100,000 euros. The boy says yes, to call him right now to get permission, after a long chat and explaining the situation to his boss. The protag takes the cell phone from his hands to talk himself with that person, saying, "You already know what's happening, therefore grant the permission at once." The boss responds that of course he understands everything and asks him to pass it to his employee. Before ending the call, he says, "Tell the one who moves his arms," and throws the cell phone, sticking it into the wall next to the cellar, while saying that finally everything is resolved. "You yourself heard that your boss said, 'I understand everything.' Therefore he gave you permission to do the transaction." In that way, the protag leaves with 3 bags about to burst with money, happy to have completed another so beneficial deal, while the seller is left crying, unable to do anything against that so unequal situation. 10 minutes later, entering the shop, the boss asks about why he didn't call back and for what reason his employee hung up the call. But he is shocked to see his wall broken while that worker was resigning with much shame for being unable to withstand that pressure. Totally serious after observing the destroyed wall, the boss, taking out his cell phone, calls someone saying, "Hey Chris, it's me, I need you to come here." Elsewhere, we see a woman walking through the people with such elegance and a presence that attracts the gazes of all those people who see her. Many immediately noticed who she was. This redhead with glasses seemed to be someone quite popular. With such calm, she heads toward the shop. Entering through the door, the manager becomes euphoric upon seeing her. "Is it really her?" To which she responds that yes, he is correct, she is Chris. This girl was the 4th S-rank hero in all of Spain. He had heard rumors that she was his boss's niece, but never believed it was true. Chris says she was called by her uncle because a hero has been giving them problems and headaches by coming to sell magic stones by force. She comes so he can tell her the situation in more detail. In the courtyard of a residence is Dylan, his little sister in the background playing with the new stuffed animals while he was meditating. No matter how many times he hunted monsters all day, he is only capable of earning 150,000 euros. That's why he seeks to fight in S-rank portals on his own. For that, it is totally obligatory to recover his former power. What makes this objective difficult is that in this world he doesn't possess the same amount of mana which abounded in his old world. At the speed he's advancing right now, it would take at least 3 years, if not more, to recover all his power. Obviously, it would be ideal to also get adequate equipment. but even the worst quality pieces cost hundreds of millions. Abruptly, he stops meditating, hurries running to where his little sister is playing to take her and bring her inside the house as soon as possible, closing the door behind them. The grandmother asks what he's doing and why he slams the door like that. Everything begins to shake. The grandmother, trying not to fall, tells herself it could be a big earthquake, scaring the little one who starts screaming desperately. Dylan, attentive and calm, notes that it's not an earthquake as such. This should be caused by the formation of an enormous rift. And he is really right. A great rift just appeared in the middle of their courtyard in a few seconds. Dylan lets go of his sister and leaves the room, warning her not to go out. The whole area ceased to be a safe place, so he ends up going out into the courtyard again. And he plunges fully into the rift while his sister and grandmother call him worried. In downtown Madrid, in one of the Hero Association buildings, the emergency alarms wouldn't stop sounding. A new rift was detected on the map. It's the first to appear after 63 days. The team leader orders, "The White Lion Guild is the closest in the whole area. Call them immediately and also all heroes near that location." He himself asks specifically where the rift was detected. Upon learning it was generated in a simple private residence, he worries. This is because if a civilian hero were to fall inside, no one else would be able to enter until that person came out. But if the person who enters ends up dying inside, a catastrophe will begin where waves of monsters would be expelled by the rift for 10 days non-stop, causing practically the destruction of the entire city. One of the analysts informs that, in fact, someone had already entered the rift. The young man's grandmother called and reported that her grandson entered to save his younger sister. The team leader becomes desperate upon knowing that a civilian entered before they even knew the rift's location. He finally asks what the probability is that a monster wave will occur. 99.9%, they tell him. That's the probability that everything goes to hell. At the same time, a report is delivered to Dylan's stepmother. She has just found out that the boy had awakened. Her assistant responds that the young Dylan was not registered as a hero, but definitely had obtained some kind of awakening when they threw him into the rift trying to kill him. And he is going to continue. He is interrupted by the Karen, who shouts like crazy, questioning what kind of thug they hired. Is Pedro useless? She ends up asking her assistant, Manager Lee, to notify Pedro. If he was incapable of killing Dylan, he should return at least 10 times the amount he was paid. Manager Lee, pleased, tells the crazy woman that such a thing is not necessary, because a rift fortunately appeared in Dylan's very home. Besides, he also heard that the same boy was the first and only one to enter. The woman thinks about that news for a moment, reaching the conclusion that they wouldn't hear anything again from that boy. Since the mage orders Lee to keep everything secure until the rift disappears on its own or they annihilate all the monsters. Bare feet on warm earth, a clean and beautiful sky. The perfect sunny day where our protagonist found himself, who ended up standing in a deep forest after entering the rift. Dylan thinks impressive and hard to believe, but he already knows this place. The Patazua Forest. He used to spend a lot of time here when he was still a little one in his previous life. Everything here, the shape of the forest, its trees, its grasses, and even the wind. Here there is an abundant amount of mana. And also, according to his memory, going out through this part will be just as he thought. The World Tree. This is an ancient spirit that sustains the flow of mana of enormous purity. His previous world was destroyed because this tree was burned. And that stopped all the flow of mana back then. Now it was here again without apparent reason. The protagonist is glad for this, knowing that in this way he can recover his former amount of mana. Preparing himself, he goes to meditate next to the tree. Totally concentrated, inhaling and exhaling repeatedly. Every second used to increase his mana. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, he had even forgotten to eat or drink. He was strongly concentrated on his breathing for 10 long days. During the 10th night, finally, they made their appearance again. Opening his eyes, he sees them. Volquinas. Ugly creatures set in purple flames with their teeth and brains exposed. According to the Prodag, they were the ones who burned the World Tree in his past life. The creatures, not even capable of reasoning, launched the attack trying to burn the World Tree again. Dylan thinks that ideally he would have a sword with a water attribute, but lacking that. These things are already approaching, and it really doesn't matter. He will destroy them all just with his fists. Dylan raised his hand, preparing his mana, launching an attack at one of the beasts, causing it terrible pain, annihilating it in a moment. The other Volquinas stop upon seeing that one of them was killed in a single move. This really was nothing more than mana release. Basically, you accumulate it like any other energy and make it explode against your enemy. The Protag sweats a bit after performing the attack. It had been a while since he released that amount of mana. Before he can rest, the Vulcanas accumulate mana, and from their mouths, powerful projectiles are spat. This arrives quickly, about to impact the protagonist. But activating his mana again, he manages to block and undo the attacks. Dylan says as he advances slowly, "I must confirm and ensure the survival of the world tree this time, and with my own eyes test my new strength through mana." The Vulcanas try to bite the protag. He, with his hand, takes one of them, easily making it retreat. He charges his mana. He smashes them against each other, making them explode into pieces. The fire of their own bodies slowly goes out, completely consuming their torsos, dropping mana magic stones. "Confirmation completed," says Dylan. Now that he remembers, he finishes off all these bastards. He will also be getting the inextinguishable flame. He wonders if it will be so. The battle continues for a long while. The protagonist remembered that those flames really had a high probability of being dropped by these creatures. How many of them would he be able to get before he finishes off all the Vulcanas? He destroyed them one by one. All of them until finally only one living being remained standing under the light of the tree. A small nugget holed in the ground together with the mana stones. The protag picks them up, knowing this is one of the inextinguishable flames. He gets excited about obtaining this object again in this life, breaking this, releasing a small flame that covers his palm. Dylan manipulates that fire, thinking it would be good to obtain more mana from the tree, but his current body couldn't withstand so much power. The safe method to keep progressing right now is to begin absorbing this flame to change his mana, turning it into a fire attribute. After being a while absorbing it, his body wrapped in flames began to stabilize, reminding him of how in his past life he was barely interested in these flames. So he threw them away like little stones, and now it takes more than 10 minutes to consume a single one at a time. Once stable, he shakes his arm a bit while looking at the other flames and stones on the ground, thinking about absorbing all he can now. Outside of that mystical place, a great many people were gathered around the rift. Civilians, journalists, and police. Someone annoyed complains, "This is William," who couldn't believe this situation had worsened because a crazy person had gone inside alone. His companion King says that boy did it to save his little sister. This is completely indifferent to William. He thinks that's something someone would do who just jumped into the rift to obtain an awakening, without thinking about the danger he put others in. If what he wanted was to die, he should do it by himself. Involving people like that is a nuisance. Changing the subject, his companion asks him about the orders his master had given them. They should do as always and follow the manual, wait for the monster wave to appear. King wonders why. In this situation, rifts appeared at the same time in various parts of the world. In the United States, China, the United Kingdom, Turkey, Switzerland. It's the first time such an event occurs. William says that's right. Even the master of the Hume Guild was busy with this. Apparently in all the other places, they were able to control the rift in its initial stage. Whereas here in Spain, they are the only ones who ended up screwed because of an arrogant bastard. It would be better if he didn't even manage to come out alive, because he's going to give him a beating with his own hands. 28 days have passed since the rupture appeared out of nowhere. The Hero Association declared that a level 1 monster wave will likely be unleashed. In preparation, given the case of Mr. S, the young man who was the first to enter, does not manage to come out within the next 2 days. Turning off the news, we return to the lone shark who was hired to scam Dylan. He asks his second-in-command if this Mr. S was the boy Dylan. The manager named Kim also. Kim is the manager and right-hand man of this man named Jasu. Jasu's right-hand man confirms that several subordinates affirmed this information. Dylan was the one who entered the rift. Jasu asks what the survival chances of that boy were. Kim believes that because he was a civilian, he wouldn't have more than 1%. Moreover, not 1%, but 0.1%. Smiling, Jasu says a civilian, "Don't be ridiculous. Those idiots from the association don't even know what they're talking about. But what if he really is an awakened?" Thinking, Kim says that if that were the case, it would depend on the hero rank he possesses. And even then, it's still difficult to calculate. There were too many variables. Finally, Jasu accepts he was right. Knowing how to fight against heroes is not the same as surviving in a rupture. Instead, there is another matter they should worry about. Didn't the damn Dylan have 2 relatives? Maybe it would be a good idea to find them. We'll see what to do with them. For now, find them and bring them here safely. If Dylan dies, we'll sell both their organs. And if he happens to survive, we'll gain a favor by saying we were taking care of them. This damn rat was only thinking about profiting from this situation. In the world tree, the protagonist shows impressive progress in his abilities. Expelling a large amount of fire-type mana, Dylan thinks. How much time had passed? He had managed to absorb all the hundreds of flames dropped by the Vulcanas. At this moment, he is capable of using mana at will. and his fire resistance increased considerably just by having this attribute, fire. He has achieved a state superior to when he was called the god of the sword. Gently touching the tree, he thinks. During his past life and his current stay, he is completely grateful to this tree. Perhaps this would be their final meeting, their last goodbye. Looking back, he swears, in case they meet again and it needs protection. He will not hesitate for a second to protect it, however necessary. Dylan begins to exit the rift, walking slowly. Apparently there were no presences within a 1-kilometer perimeter. The government had evacuated people in case a monster wave appeared. Only in one nearby direction does the protagonist manage to feel a slightly strong aura. He decides to hurry to investigate its origin. Spying, he sees 2 men chatting. From their clothing, the boy recognizes them as government workers or heroes. Like that time they tried to arrest him when he infiltrated a gate. This time, if they caught him, it could be problematic, unlike before. Dylan uses his mana, forming a flame and throwing it, aiming at one of the distant rooftops. It takes a moment, but it causes a tremendous explosion. Both men shit themselves with fright. A monster had come out without them noticing. Immediately they set off, going to where the disturbance had been generated. In a short time, they arrive at the building. A furious William wonders what the hell was going on. It was just fire, but there was nothing else. Watching everything from afar, the protagonist thinks. The strong nature and precision he managed to achieve are excellent. These flames before your eyes wouldn't be something beautiful for you, says the protagonist. Yes, you would surely be fascinated with it. After all, you were Qseb, the best fire mage on the entire continent. King, shifting his attention from the fire, calls William. Something strange was happening with the rupture. It had begun to move in a strange way. They hurry to surround it to liquidate the monsters. But when they arrive, they are left with their mouths open, doubting if this was real or what they were witnessing. The rupture had just closed mysteriously, while the one who caused it walked away calmly, continuing with his life as if nothing had happened. A breaking news announcement issued by the government. The breach that appeared almost a month ago was reported as closed during the early hours of today. 29 days after the resident Dylan entered it, he remains unlocated and is officially considered dead. The Hero Association was expecting a monster wave, but due to this strange event, what was expected did not occur. An exhaustive investigation is being carried out. An inexplicable fire also broke out near the rupture zone, a scrapyard located near the area. This news generates various opinions among the population. Some remain angry with Dylan for endangering all of Madrid. Others believe that even so he did it to save his sister. Furthermore, if the boy died, they shouldn't be disrespectful to the dead. Although from a general point of view, if they hadn't been lucky and the rift had not finally closed, the entire city would be a war zone. Dylan kept his low profile. He pays no attention to these chats and opinions. Instead, he thinks that if he really couldn't return to the world tree, it was a shame. But at the same time, it was a small relief. That way he can focus on other important things, the things for which he accepted coming to this world. He arrives in front of that strange place. Inside, he finds 2 men conversing. One of them mentions that now that the protagonist had died in the rift, the grandmother and the girl were doomed. The other has doubts about what the boss will do with those 2. The one with the cigarette believes the old woman would definitely be lost. But that girl looked like she would be pretty when she grew up. Surely the boss will make good use of her. Someone interrupts their chat. Dylan, after listening to these 2, only asks where the boss of these useless men is. In a car parked outside the place, getting out of it. Josu and his second-in-command following him. Josu is glad that finally the protagonist has died. He spent almost the whole month sleeping badly because of the intrigue. He asks his assistant what's on the agenda for this beautiful day. Apparently, he only had an appointment to have lunch with CEO Bayek. The rest of the day was completely free. The boss smiles. He asks that in that case his assistant could contact Mrs. Cam to inform her that he would come during the night, and to ask that she only prepare the new girls to attend to him. Going up the stairs, he hears a small noise. Someone was thrown against the wall. In an instant, he already knew what was happening, and that night would fall upon him. A few moments later, it is him who goes flying too, falling dragged across the floor. His thugs were punished like children, looking and cornering him against the wall while an angry Dylan says, "Since you're on the other side of the room, you can come back here crawling like a fucking dog." Trembling, Josu didn't know where to hide, while Dylan puts his feet on the table asking, "Didn't you hear me, or are you trying to play crazy?" The mobster begins to get on all fours, but this wasn't enough. "Bark," Dylan tells him. He doesn't deserve to be treated as a human. "Bark like a stray dog." Josu barely whispers a small bark. "Do it again." He does it again over and over, each time with more enthusiasm, knowing that his dignity has already been trampled, and the only thing left for him is to try to save his life at all costs, even though his men are listening to him. "Bark louder," he is told. "Weren't you acting servile with me since we were fixing the debt issue? So how do you end up stabbing me in the back at the slightest idea of advantage you think you have against me? You are despicable trash. Jasu, do you think you're the first idiot I have to deal with?" The mobster responds to this crying on his knees, begging for forgiveness. He swears to follow the protagonist's orders as his loyal pet. He receives a kick making him bite his tongue and fall on his back. Dylan speaks to the second in command. From now on, he will be the one in charge of the place. They will no longer follow the orders of that dog. He believes it would be easy for them to take care of their old boss. The protagonist gives him permission to get rid of Jasu. The second in command, swallowing saliva, apologizes for the boss's life because he had several important contacts. If he became the new leader, the others would suspect them. He tells him to be patient with Jasu at least this once. Dylan complains, "Why are you so stubborn? You are good at making people disappear by throwing them into the sea, crushing them in discreet places. Well, if you don't want to do it, I'll simply throw him into one of the gates for a monster to have him for breakfast." All those present are terrified upon hearing that. Immediately it is Jasu who begins to cry like a madman, pleading for another chance so he can fix his mistakes, working for the protagonist for the rest of his life. An irritated Dylan thinks he must eliminate him now. Otherwise, he will become a thorn in his side later on. Still, he sighs, believing that lately he has been too soft. He offers his hand to help the mobster up. He is relieved to know he was forgiven, and he will swear to compensate for all the bad actions against the protagonist. From now on, he will be a devoted servant, but for poor Jasu there is no opportunity. A powerful flame envelops the hands of both, leaving the mobster king impacted. The temperature is so high he can barely resist his nerves being burned. Dylan takes the opportunity to tell him, "This is the last chance. From now on, if something hurts my family, you will be the first ones I liquidate." Then he pulls his hand, tearing it off completely, and throws it to the ground like a handful of ash. Finally, he withdraws, leaving the man feeling the pain on his skin. Tissue, flesh, and bone, that were damaged as a symbol of a deal they just sealed. Dylan turns and orders everyone that they must protect his family 24/7, for the rest of their lives. Officially, the protagonist is dead. That's how he was considered by the government and the Hero Association. The young man died inside the rupture. That is what they spread through all the media, while Dylan himself saw on the internet publications about his death. This made him think, because even if he revealed that he is still alive, it would end up becoming a problem. Since they won't leave him in peace, Jasu would surely find a new house to move into soon, so he would choose to take things calmly. Dylan's little sister happily ate a hamburger with fries. She is happy because they were going to move to a new house. Dylan also informs her that once they move, he can send her to kindergarten. Furthermore, he himself would enroll in a school the following year. The idea doesn't seem to please the little one much, making the protagonist ask her if she doesn't want to go to kindergarten with the other children. "No," she responds. She doesn't want to be taken there because the children make fun of her. They make fun of her for not having a father or a mother. Dylan reflects deeply, accepting in this way that it wasn't necessary for his brother to attend a kindergarten. They will arrange it so that the following year she goes directly to a school. The little girl is happy about this and begins to calm down while she continues eating. Through all this, the protagonist thinks about getting money to send her to a private school, prestigious and where she won't be looked down upon. One day earlier, Dylan was taken by the second in command to a hotel. The protagonist gets angry because there they were still detaining his brother and grandmother. The assistant mentions that since it's a building of their organization, it is well protected, but he is ignored. Inside the room were both of them sitting on the bed who get excited to see him again. The girl jumps to hug her brother, whom she hadn't seen for almost a month. His grandmother only held his hand, sobbing and grateful that he was safe. The little one can't resist anymore and starts to cry. The protagonist, seeing her like this, feels something he hadn't felt in a long time. He asks her to calm down. He is back. Returning to the present, she asks if the protagonist was also a hero. Dylan believes that she would like him to be one of them, but no, quite the opposite. She had heard how heroes died often fighting monsters, and no matter how great they are, she and the grandmother wish to be together, the three of them safe forever. That is her greatest dream. Speechless, Dylan lowers his head thinking about those words. "We want to be with you forever." Even in his past life, he was the one who lasted the longest, the last survivor of the human species. The number of things he lost by facing the monsters all those years. Now he remembered it, something precious he didn't remember after so much pain and suffering. In this world, he again felt that desire to live to protect. even if it's this small circle of happiness. We move to the Madrid Hero Association. We see an old man named Nath, founder of the Madrid Association, member of the World Board of Directors of Heroes. His assistant informs him that they were not able to find out accurate information about what happened in the rupture. This disappoints the old man. If a rift can disappear by itself, it means it was also capable of coming out again at any moment. The girl mentions that yes, it's possible. This causes a new number of important variables, and perhaps it would have been better if the monster wave had appeared. Old Nath angrily silences her. For public safety, they were lucky that not a single creature came out. It was the most fortunate outcome. This old Nath is one of the 100 most respected heroes in the entire world. If this man were to run for president, he would win with the largest historical margin. It is said that he is capable of ending with national statements on his own, if he felt like it, luckily. His interest is not political power or wealth. Instead, he prioritizes the safety of the people against rupture phenomena. Old Nath orders to continue with the investigation anyway. There must be something he is not seeing properly. His assistant accepts the order and also informs him that Dylan's grandmother, the owner of the residence where the incident occurred, had agreed to sell the land to the association. Nath asks the girl to try to help with the purchase by offering a value above market price so as not to be unfair. That way he could at least try to give some comfort for the loss of young Dylan. Using his tact, old Nath observes the map. He is deeply worried by the fact that several ruptures appeared at the same time in various parts of the world. It could be something serious. He thinks out loud how China and the USA controlled the situation properly. However, the UK reported a small problem because their best heroes were sent to other parts. At that moment, a notification arrives. Opening it, the old man cannot believe what he just saw. A warning. A monster wave has been unleashed in the UK rupture. Maximum alert for its citizens in downtown Madrid. An unconscious Dylan was carrying one of those backpacks he always carries. We already know where to exchange his valuable contents. Entering the shop again. That seller was calm as always until recognizing the protagonist. He alerts the manager, who this time was sitting in the shop reading a newspaper, closing it. He wonders if this was that problematic hero who forced his employee to buy stones from him without commissions. Dylan says this was perfect. Finally, there was a superior in this shop to do business without problems. He throws his backpack on the floor. The manager refuses to negotiate with the protagonist and asks him to leave peacefully. In his mind, he thinks the brat had come back to bring unrefined, low-quality stones. Anyway, it would be a waste of time. The angry protagonist asks if he really doesn't want to do business with him. The manager responds, "Look, it's just that you don't understand. A 1% commission you try to impose means losses for us. It's not profitable to deal with you, so pick up your backpack and get out of here." Dylan says if that's the case, don't regret that decision. But the already annoyed manager says, "Shit, you really don't use your head." In case you don't know, it's a reason why the Central Port Agency charges a 5% commission by itself. This distribution, nah, better forget it, I'm not telling you. It's pointless to try to explain it to you. Turning around, the manager ends by saying, "Just leave and don't come back to my shop." The protagonist responds to this by turning the backpack over, letting all the stones from inside fall out, leaving the merchants petrified. One particular stone with a blue cross caught their attention. It was a hero magic stone. It is an extremely valuable one. Seeing how they reacted amuses Dylan, hero magic stone. A while ago, an infamous one was decompressing magic stone. An accident occurred at that moment, and that's how he obtained his awakening, becoming a hero. Since then, this type of stone became tremendously popular, used for awakening or magical improvements among the heroes themselves. It is an extraordinary energy source, like a first-class luxury item. That is the reason these two still can't hold their jaws properly in front of such treasure. Dylan suggests putting everything back in the bag to then withdraw and go to another shop. Changing his attitude completely, the same manager offers a coffee while the other one takes care of calculating the price of these stones. In the middle of that, he busies himself cleaning and calculating prices while the protagonist drank calmly. The manager, trying to be friendly, discusses why the boy wanted to impose a 0.5% commission. "Wasn't that a robbery?" Dylan, knowing where he wants to go, refuses in advance, then asks again why he lowered the commission even more when it was already at 1%. "Because I'm annoyed," responds the protagonist, causing the man to bow, apologizing for having disrespected him earlier. The boy asks for silence. He was already tired of receiving apologies. He just wants to know if he accepts the deal or not. The employee was disgusted by how egocentric the protagonist was every time he entered this shop. The manager accepts but begins to explain things about the stones and numbers, but Dylan tells him to shut up. Still, the manager tries to negotiate. First he says 9%, then nervously says no, that 8, a 7, a 6. Yes, 6% commission. With that, they don't even get a good profit. Dylan says that if he has no profit, then in that case he is a failure as a merchant. The employee can no longer stand that negotiation. It was too embarrassing for the manager, who ends up prostrate on the floor, defeated. Out of pure pity, the protagonist agrees to raise it again to 1%. "You are a fucking scammer," the manager shouts at our protagonist. Of course, in his own mind, Dylan whispers something to the man. He tells him to understand the following: he has 7 identical bags to sell. Automatically, the boss orders the employee that, instead of wasting time, he will begin to create the contract. Finally, after a long wait, the protagonist receives the amount of 67 million euros. At this rate, that property, Dylan thinks, of 110 million euros could become an achievable goal. Currently, his biggest problem remained the small number of stones dropped by the gates. No matter how high-ranked they are not enough. If only he could move between the ruptures freely. On everyone's cell phones, a government alarm appears. People get scared, believing that perhaps another rupture appeared in the middle of Madrid. But slowly looking at the screen, it mentions that it was in the United Kingdom. Quite far from there, that alarm suggests to Spanish citizens about rescheduling their business or tourism trips to the United Kingdom. As for Spanish citizens already there, the embassy will be working on their security. That message annoys the protagonist a bit. For him, it was pathetic that the heroes had been so incompetent in that country. In his past life, no matter in which country or continent the rupture was caused, the protagonist would be the first to head towards the zone to fight and close the rifts. However, this time he would not be that type of person. In the afternoon, Dylan and his family went to a restaurant. The prices were around extremely expensive, according to the grandmother. Only 100 grams of meat cost more than 1,000 euros. The calm protagonist asks her not to worry. On his last hunt, he got enough money to splurge a little, but better to spend it eating a good meal. His sister tries the meat a bit distrustfully. She opens her eyes excitedly. Obviously, the meat was finger-licking good, and the little one was fascinated. The old lady still looks distrustfully at how that meat was being grilled, while the protagonist, looking at the menu, orders 4 plates of ribs. Basically, he ordered cuts of the best quality. The lady asks why he ordered so much food. She worries because maybe they wouldn't be able to eat so much among the 3 of them. Dylan smiles because clearly the plan today was to eat until they burst, so she should stop worrying and start eating well. She is a bit embarrassed until it's the little one who offers her some with a fork. She asks her to eat. It was really delicious and she couldn't miss it, convincing the grandmother, who clearly after trying it loves the flavor. The freshly made meat is incredible, and so both finally ate without worries. A girl we saw before enters the same restaurant, attracting the attention of every person seated. She approaches him, asks, "Mr. Dylan, could we talk for a moment about something?" She says directly to our boy. Dylan interrupts her before she speaks again. He asks her if she doesn't see that he is eating calmly with his family. If she wanted to talk, she must wait until they finish or come back another time. This makes the girl think. She gets angry, wondering what kind of man Dylan is. He really didn't know who she was. Still, she apologizes, informing him that in that case she would wait for him. She sits in the waiting area while all the people couldn't believe that she was in a place like that. She is a world star, S-rank heroine, and one of the most desired girls in the world. Who would be the idiot that leaves Chris waiting? She, however, is only thinking about Dylan. 2 months ago, the boy was left in a portal to die but managed to survive. It is suspected that at that moment he obtained his awakening, and then a month later he was reported as having entered a rupture in which he was declared dead by everyone. So what sense did it make that she was seeing him right in front of her eating meat as if nothing? The gaze from a moment ago managed to make her tense. That was impossible. Perhaps the boy is S-rank after only 2 months awakened. Is that even possible? Even the oil admiral, Canmore, used a large part of his fortune and 5 years of effort to achieve S-rank. Chris thought that Dylan must have some special ability and wasn't really that powerful. After a while, the family had finished eating, so they began to leave the place. Chris, seeing this, approaches again to intercept Dylan. Standing in front of them and getting ready, the protagonist makes his presence known to Pedro. This was the one Dylan's stepmother hired to kill him. In other words, the one who initially threw him into a rift. He is happy to see Dylan, but questions how it is possible that he was able to come out alive from such a portal. Approaching from behind, annoyed. And is the protagonist some kind of crawling cockroach to survive like that? Chris is surprised by Pedro's appearance, and wonders what the hell he is doing exactly in this place. Calmly, Dylan turns and calls Chris. In this way, Pedro gets confused because he didn't even notice her. The protagonist asks if she could do him a small favor. In exchange, he would discuss with her any matter she wanted. Chris accepts, and the boy only asks her to call a taxi for his family and make sure they get in safely. She is impacted seeing Dylan's face while he continues talking. As for me, you'll have to wait. I have a debt to collect. Outside the restaurant, the taxi that Chris kindly called arrived so the protagonist's family could be taken home without problems. The damn heroine, a bit uncomfortable, says goodbye to them, raising her hand. While she moves away from the vehicle, inside the restaurant, a loud noise occurs, caused by Dylan slapping with an open hand the one who tried to kill him a few months ago. Pedro gets enraged by this and is about to counterattack, but is stopped by a scared waitress asking them please not to fight inside the facilities. She ends up receiving a blow to the face, being pushed aside. Pedro shouts at everyone to get out immediately if anyone meddles again because he was looking for his death. He was nobody to give him orders. He was so concentrated on talking trash that he didn't see Dylan's blow that ends up connecting directly to Pedro's nose, causing him to start bleeding and leaving the bastard on his knees. Dylan says, "Pedro, do you remember how you tried to lock me inside a gate full of monsters so I would die? Well, now we have several things to clarify, don't you think?" Pedro tries to recover, says he has nothing to say to a person who was abandoned by his own father. Instead, he asks if he was also already aware that it was the stepmother who hired him to kill him. In response to that, Dylan takes out his cell phone, unlocks it, and immediately begins recording the audio, telling Pedro to repeat what he just said. "Go to hell," whispers Pedro, who activates his power, enveloping his fist in aura, and asks, "Say what again? That your mother was a whore? Better die already, you fucking bastard." He ends up shouting while launching an attack at Dylan. The protagonist catches the fist. He only had to raise his hand, manifests a bit of his mana, and makes it explode to redirect Pedro's attack, exactly as he did with the Volquinas at the tree. Pedro is surprised by this. He wonders if he really deflected his attack like that. Dylan hadn't even finished using his mana. He concentrates it and expels it, impacting his enemy, making him fall to the floor. Without giving him rest, he lunges and begins to beat him up. The waitress, crying and completely nervous, tries to call the police, but she isn't even able to remember the number correctly. Chris approaches and takes her cell phone, asks her to stay calm, because she would be the one to take care of the situation. The poor panicked waitress thanks the heroine for it. Dylan hits Pedro repeatedly with force, who is incapable of defending himself. But this is observed by Chris, who is thinking of approaching. A B-rank hero like Pedro was being totally humiliated in that way. Is Dylan maybe a B-rank? No, perhaps A-rank. But if so, there wouldn't even be that much difference between them. "Hey, Dylan," Chris calls our protagonist. He tells her that if Pedro kept receiving his blows, he was going to die. The boy knows she is right and drops the weak body of the unconscious Pedro. Chris asks him how much he knows about the hero he just beat up. Dylan responds, "Enough, is there a problem?" The girl says yes, a big problem because of his cousin Paul, an S-rank hero. "Ah, I know," says Dylan. "What about it?" Chris, faced with such a disinterested response, has no choice but to believe that Dylan was playing dumb. Even knowing that Pedro's cousin is an S-rank, he decided to hit him. The only real reason no one dared to touch that guy until this moment was because of his relationship with his S-rank cousin. This situation had become dangerous. She understood that the protagonist holds grudges against Pedro, but if Dylan thought an S-rank was going to ignore him after doing this, he was very mistaken. Dylan smiles while the heroine asks him if he really isn't afraid of the S-rank taking revenge. The protagonist approaches her to tell her that the important thing now is that she was beginning to annoy him with so many silly questions. Both are left facing each other. Dylan literally asks Chris, "What doubts do you have?" Through all this, the poor waitress had hidden behind the counter, while in the background we see Dylan releasing an intense aura. Both look at each other as if they were going to confront. It is Chris who breaks the silence, first apologizing for having arrived unannounced. But it was her uncle who asked her for a favor to take care of the protagonist for selling magic stones at a very abusive rate. She suggests that instead of taking them there, he sell them directly to her. Dylan asks how much money she was offering. The girl was hoping to buy all that the boy could sell her. Smiling, he responds that it really is a considerable number of stones. Chris considers it a small challenge, so she mentions that S-ranks like her possess absurd wealth to buy all the magic stones they want. Dylan, excited, says that he honestly has no problem selling them to her, but in return he would set a condition. saying it's nothing important, but since it's you, surely you can do it without problem. From there we move to a place. A bottle shatters against the floor because the damn crazy stepmother of Dylan shouts desperately how it is that damn Dylan is still alive in that rupture without being able to get out. She throws another bottle at her assistant who, dodging it, apologizes to her and mentions that even the Hero Association gave Dylan up for dead. Karen exclaims for him to shut up and stop making excuses, and how are they supposed to fix that problem? The man informs her that there is still another thing she should know. Pedro was attacked and defeated by Dylan. This deeply confused her because she thought it was something impossible, but it's possible that Dylan knows too much. Finally, she starts to think seriously that if her husband, Dylan's father, or even her father-in-law find out in some way about all this, it would become a huge problem. But there must still be some way to calm things down without the news media finding out and the company's stocks plummeting. She orders Lee to immediately silence the press by threatening to cut their funding, and also the police. Everything must be kept quiet about this. Lee affirms he has already taken care of all that, making Karen relax for a moment in her seat. That man approaches to ask what the real plan was going to be because right now they were only fixing things with duct tape. Here the lady finds out through Lee that Paul was Pedro's cousin. Because of this, she asks if he means S-rank Paul. Paul Jiggy is an infamous and very despicable person. Even among the heroes themselves, he is a total human trash. It was believed that he resembled his cousin a lot, but it turns out Pedro only did Paul's dirty work. Lee comments that this hero disassociated himself from his cousin the moment the police and media found out about Pedro's acts, and he took measures on his own, to which Karen asks to schedule a meeting with that man as soon as possible. She also asks if that mobster from the place where Dylan always goes to cause trouble ended up betraying them or simply disappeared. Lee confirms the betrayal since it is known that they are now set to protect Dylan's family. He calls a certain prosecutor so that he regrets having joined that brat. There are 37 active rupture zones throughout Spain. Of all of them, only 5 were converted into gates. The others are only accessible with hunts scheduled by the most important heroes within the association. So we see how Chris uses her golden identification to enter an expedition accompanied by other heroes, along with the protagonist, who thinks he had a good opportunity to meet this S-rank heroine with full access to the ruptures. A woman speaks with Chris, thanking her for wanting to hunt in the rifts alongside her team. This is Inju, A-rank heroine, leader of the Belbel Poppy Guild or something like that. Chris barely says that of course she wasn't going to stay waiting outside. Besides, the more heroes there are, the less risk they run hunting. Without paying much attention to the chat, Chris turns to observe Dylan, remembering what they agreed on in that restaurant. The protagonist has asked that the only condition for selling her the stones is that she help him enter the rifts. At that moment he will sell her at a fair price all that they get from killing monsters. But why? Because hunting in zones is much better, he said. Currently Chris thought the guy was crazy. Why do you want to enter deadly zones for that reason? Anyway, she believes that, no matter what her uncle had asked her, the hero magic stones come in handy to improve her power. So after walking through the entrance hallway, the group of heroes goes outdoors. The red-haired girl asks Chris who is the boy she brought with her. She didn't believe he was just an acquaintance, and suspected that the S-rank heroine might be interested in getting a boyfriend. Chris denies that, says he is simply someone she owes a favor to, and for that reason she brought him. This surprises her, since it's not very normal for an S-rank hero to owe favors to anyone, unless if we're talking about someone like Chris, it wasn't normal at all. While they were talking, a powerful wind arrived where the group was. Everyone looked up and got on guard because a huge winged creature was approaching with intentions to fight them. The girl who is there recognizes the beast as a cockatrice. Chris organizes the group quickly, giving defensive positions, ignoring the danger, and quickly launches herself into the confrontation. With a jump, she quickly cuts the distance and launches herself against the creature. The whole team is left with their mouths open, worried by the protagonist's onslaught, while he concentrates mana in his fist and hits the monster with a single blow. Something never before seen happened that day. The moment the group had just arrived to enter the rift zone, they are ambushed by a powerful beast known for its power. A man was able to react before all his companions. Chris, the group leader, begins giving instructions to defend themselves. It is Dylan, the unrestrained young man who, passing by her running, jumps, and being in front of the monster, activates his powerful mana. With fire attribute, the creature, noticing this, is incapable of avoiding it, afraid of receiving that powerful blow full-on, which impacts brutally against the ground. Chris, seeing this feat, is impacted. The monster had fallen with a single blow. Not only her, but also her companions wonder if they are dreaming. Lifting his foot, Dylan says, "Still missing the coup de grace to make sure," stomping on the beast, definitively finishing it off. The others are left speechless seeing such an act until Uni asks who the hell that guy is. "A strong human being," says Chris. To this, obviously, the other girl asks what the hell he is saying. That answer makes no sense at all. How many heroes were capable of killing a cockatrice using a single attack? Chris, trying to downplay it so they don't suspect anything, talks about how Uni could also do it if at least it was about knocking down the monster. Uni says she will stop talking nonsense because everyone there saw how that absurd battle was. That damn guy launched a blow in the air and the fucking bird fell to the ground stiff. Chris, noticing that this was getting out of control, ignores the questions about who that boy was and decides to change plans at the last minute. She informs her team that she will go directly to the central zones. They should stay in this zone. Being a rank heroes, going further in would be dangerous. Dylan, after taking out the magic stone, mentions that he had no intention of sharing with anyone who hasn't contributed anything. Chris complains to him because she hadn't even thought of asking him for anything. Outside of that, she tells him if he wants to go deeper into the rift, since this zone seems to be very easy for him. The protagonist smiles and, picking up his knife, says yes. That is exactly what he was looking for. Chris speaks, saying to Dylan, seeing the direction she takes, he prepares to take impulse and leaving a shockwave shoots off after her. The girl who is there says that if Ms. Chris is a bullet, this boy is a damn missile. One of the guys suggests following them but still wonders if he would be capable of going at that pace, and no, obviously he couldn't. The girl suggests staying in the zone and hunting around as always since they were just passing the time. But she, analyzing the monster, thinks everyone usually praises her for being an A-rank heroine when really she is someone small compared to an S-rank like Chris. She can't even imagine comparing herself to that boy. Chris runs towards the interior, looks back and sees that Dylan wasn't behind her, thinks about slowing down a bit. But the protagonist asks her if she could go a little faster. Leaving her without any expression, she trips from the scare, surprising the protagonist, but the one who was really submerged in doubts was Chris. She didn't understand how that boy could overtake her like that, being she the second best sprinter in all of Spain. Dylan stops in the middle of the trot to turn and see her and ask why she is going so slow. He thought she was trying to show off her speed. Chris, annoyed, clarifies that it was not like that at all. At no moment did she want to show off or anything like that. The protagonist observes an enormous mountain and asks the girl what was found in that area. Chris looks attentively at the point Dylan was indicating and responds saying that in that place was found the boss monster of this rupture, Karserian. A gigantic creature of 20 meters. Don't even think about approaching because you need at least 3 S-rank heroes to kill that thing. Dylan asks if it was that boss who dropped the imaginary rank magic stone. She confirms this information. That is a stone located only below the supreme rank. The protagonist takes a step forward, worrying Chris, who asks him for a bit of sanity. "You're not thinking of going to face it." She warns that she didn't bring him to that zone for him to do something so reckless. Dylan ignores her and advances towards the mountain. Chris goes into total panic. It can't be. What is that madman trying to do? She begins to chase and shout at Dylan. She tells him to stop. He was making a grave mistake going over there but was left in a cloud of dust, and both ended up heading to the zone of the rupture boss. Chris arrived behind the protagonist with complete terror in her gaze. She was paralyzed. Her brain didn't comprehend what was occurring at that moment. Karserian, the world-feared boss, was dead while a young man prepared his knife to destroy the corpse. Something was very wrong here. Alex Alba, an S-rank hero famous for hunting the boss Karserian. His first time fighting alongside 30 powerful A-rank heroes, recruited specifically for this mission. All of them were annihilated in the merciless struggle, and the only survivor was Alex Alba. He escaped with great difficulty. After that failure, a year later, he managed to ally with other S-ranks and 200 A-ranks to carry out revenge against the beast. It was a legendary battle where everyone attacked in unison while trying to restrict the monster's wings, taking away its aerial advantage, leaving it on land, the supposed terrain of the heroes. After the incredible and long battle, finally Karserian was hunted by the heroes. However, only a handful of the brave ended up coming out alive from that encounter. And now, seeing this, Chris wonders how a mega guild like that of the hero Alex still hasn't been able to recover from that day 3 long years ago that left him with psychological scars. Unconcerned, Dylan looks at Chris, reminding her that she has no merit in this combat either, making her angry for a moment. But coming to her senses, she analyzes the situation. If she hadn't seen this with her own eyes, she would never have believed it possible. The infernal and infamous boss Karserian was defeated with a single blow by that man. Dylan finally had in his hand the coveted imaginary rank magic stone, which he stores while informing the girl that she didn't need his guidance. From now on, he will hunt alone for a while. Chris asks if he was going to leave the creature's claws apart from the stone. The boss has valuable materials for research like its powerful claws. But the protagonist cares little about that. They don't give that much money. It's a tremendous waste. But he explains that currently it gave a greater benefit to take the stones from the bodies in large quantities. That if she wanted, she could keep the byproducts of the boss. He is not interested in them in the least. She could consider it as payment for showing him where this boss was found. Chris, looking indignantly at the corpse, thinks that she really doesn't need those things either. Hours later, in the middle of sunset, we see Chris's group gathered around some backpacks in silence. One of them says that Dylan has collected in a short time several enormous bags of magic stones. How was it possible? They debated how long it would take their entire guild to get the same number of stones. A full day seemed even little. Dylan had easily collected the loot of 3 days of hunting. Uni was the most impacted about the situation. The stones didn't matter at that moment. According to what Chris had said, Dylan finished off Karserian without equipment, without companions, and with a single blow. Just with those feats, he automatically became the strongest man in the entire world. While the others talked about him, Dylan returned to where the group was with another 2 bags loaded with stones. Definitely the heroes understood that, even despite what they saw today, absolutely no one was going to believe them. They would only end up being taken for crazy. Chris walks alongside Dylan and has a chat that we don't hear. This continues the rumors among the group that they too are obviously going out in silence. If you think about it, there is another option for why an S-rank hero would bring a stranger here to hunt. Uni, seeing them closer, understands that he really is the only man who doesn't look inferior to Chris, besides looking nice together for being a couple of attractive people. However, she very attentively wonders that, if it were a relationship, why do they have that so strange way of treating each other? It's as if he treats Chris as if she were nothing important. Dylan leaves the bags in Chris's hands and turns and leaves as if nothing after selling the stones to the heroine. Uni approaches Chris to ask her what those interactions were about, if really the boy left her all the bags. Chris explains to her that she spoke with Dylan to explain to him that once people find out that he killed the boss, he would become world famous in less than an hour. That's why he left first, to let her take care of it, because he isn't interested in being a star or anything like that. Uni out loud wonders what kind of man that guy was. This question stays in Chris's mind. Thinking about it, finally we see how she blushes, trying to understand the protagonist's actions. Somewhere there is a man hitting a punching bag, splitting the bag in half. This was Alex, S-rank hero, leader of the Sweet Life Guild. His assistant asks him to calm down. It's not necessary to get so upset. They had to have confidence that soon he was going to recover and would be able to advance again. Alex wipes his sweat, accepting that it was true. Once he recovers, he will be able to shut the mouths of those who despised him during the last years. He awaits the moment when all of them are on their knees before him again. His assistant also takes the opportunity to remind Alex that no other person has been capable of hunting Karserian. Someday he will surely be recognized as the killer of Karserian for being the only one who led a successful attack against that creature. That without a doubt was an unbeatable world record, says the assistant. Even the association could come to privatize the entrance to the rift only to you and your guild. Alex accepts the water bottle and is encouraged by those comments because it's true. No one in the world knew that boss as well as him. Still, the guild is recovering from what happened 3 years ago. He is the only one capable of liquidating that damn monster bird, or isn't it true? The assistant affirms everything excitedly that yes, that Alex is the only one, causing the two to end up laughing in the gym. A report about Dylan had arrived in the hands of Paul, Pedro's cousin and S-rank hero. His assistant tells him how his cousin was the one who tried to kill that Dylan by an order that indicated locking him inside a rift. This not only failed, but also caused an awakening in the boy. The person who hired Paul was Karen, executive director of Group T and second daughter of Group W, big corporate names. With that information, the S-rank understands that she is a golden cradle girl because she would be interested in killing a dog like Dylan. His assistant responds. According to what they know, Dylan is the illegitimate son of Group T. He had been taken into the main house at age 7 due to the death of his mother. And after some years, he was expelled once Karen had a new baby with the boy's father. The fact that even among family they try to kill each other amuses Paul. Standing, he asks how much his cousin charged for carrying out the murder. 3 million euros, they tell him. And he thinks that for that amount it wasn't even worth moving a finger. Besides, his cousin ended up crippled from what the rumors say. His assistant mentions that in fact, yes, he received a beating inside a restaurant. His body was seriously burned in several parts. With several broken bones, he was left completely blind in both eyes, practically fighting to live at these moments. And the responsible one was Dylan. Still, he was a soft bastard. He would have made it more extreme, would have cut off his limbs, and after letting him scream for a while would have crushed his skull to the end. The assistant also says that the heroine Chris was present, and that possibly helped Dylan. This makes Paul miss his shot, and enraged he approaches asking what he meant by Chris being there. How and why would she help that useless bastard? What kind of relationship does he have with Dylan? The assistant responds that they weren't sure of that answer, but it is known that the police kept everything quiet thanks to her testimony. Angrily, he says to find out immediately what kind of relationship those two have. If these weren't related, then it means they have a deal between them. No matter what they discover, but they must find out something soon. Paul shouts, totally unbalanced. He throws the golf club and thinks that at any moment he is going to receive a call from Karen, wanting to hire him to solve the failure of his damn useless cousin. But well, that lady comes from rich families, so she will be willing to pay a lot of money. In another place, we see Dylan walking through the streets thinking how he had been right. Hunting in the rifts brought much more benefit than doing it in the gates. The only annoying thing is that he needs Chris's help to enter. Remembering that earlier Chris said it would be impossible for her to sell the stone dropped by the boss because everyone would start asking how and where she got it. And she couldn't say she had the ability to get it by herself because she would get into a lot of trouble or be found out. The best thing for now would be to store it properly. She told Dylan that if his goal was fame, she wouldn't oppose it, and that he could take whatever credit he wanted. It was then that the protagonist handed her the bag and took off, leaving her with all the responsibility. In the present, he thinks that he really will have to find another way to enter the rifts. For now, he'll go rest at his new house, which the mobster Joshua helped find for the protagonist's family. Entering through the door, he's struck by how many shoes were inside. His little sister calls to him, telling him to look up. He finds the place packed with people waiting for him. His sister jumps to hug him, being scared, while Dylan asks who all those people are. The one in charge speaks. Dylan says, "Nice to meet you. My name is Leonard, District Attorney of Madrid. You know Mr. Joshua, right? He's arrested for aiding the director of HCS Capital in high-interest criminal operations." In the district attorney's building was our protagonist in handcuffs, who notices someone approaching. This person was talking with Assistant Lee, announces that he fulfilled his part and that Joshua along with Dylan were detained. He also takes the opportunity to thank them for kindly paying for his daughter's studies abroad. The district attorney sends the lady Karen off, thankful for doing what he loves most, taking out the trash from the streets. A moment later, he throws papers in front of Dylan, thus beginning the interrogation. He mentions all the charges listed on that sheet. With all that, he would spend over 10 years in prison. And as you can see, he already has plenty of proof of his association with Joshua. Without receiving a response, he continues insulting Dylan until he interrupts him with a question. "Are you just following that damn crazy Karen's order?" Trying to pretend, the district attorney stands up asking, "Who is Karen?" Dylan, for his part, thinks that the mobster Joshua had really fallen completely by this point. He thought about staying silent and turning himself in to avoid a scandal, but at this rate, it seems unavoidable. The man, wanting to provoke the boy, comes closer to whisper about how district attorneys in Spain were no joke and threatens that from now on they are going to ruin his life. Dylan lets a bit of his aura slip, terrifying the district attorney so much that he stumbles back. Stammering, wanting to show his authority, he raises his hand to hit the protagonist and is half stopped by an employee who tells the district attorney to come out to resolve something important. In a nearby room, everyone was confused, believing the machine was broken. No one could believe that information from the association was real. The scan says Dylan was a normal person, but that didn't make any sense. An employee says that maybe they were mistaken and the young man hadn't had an awakening at all. The district attorney, especially confused, didn't believe that Group T had made a mistake or lied to him, plus the boy knows who Karen is and intuited the whole situation. Dylan, alone in the room, thinks that now he understands why people hate the district attorneys in this country. They were just a bunch of idiots. He thought he could simply destroy the place and get his family to a safe place by escaping. Chris comes through the door asking the protagonist why he was locked up, Dylan answers indignantly that he doesn't even know why they brought him here in handcuffs. Chris comes in to calm the protagonist, trying to keep him from doing something crazy. If he used his power, it would only cause real problems. Dylan asks if she wasn't here to help him, and actually, no. She didn't come exactly for that, but once she found out the protagonist was innocent of what he was accused of, she couldn't turn away and pretend not to know. This answer seems very good to Dylan, but Chris continues talking. Apparently, the Heroes Association is only continuing to investigate the fake identifications and a new rift that would have appeared at Mako's house or a certain Mako or something like that. "What about my family? Are they okay?" asks Dylan. Chris gets indignant because apparently the boy thought she was his secretary or nanny or something like that. When she had no reason to look after his family, Dylan looks at her and Chris avoids his gaze. She turns around and says yes, he doesn't have to worry, his family is fine. Dylan thanks her for this and promises to repay the debt later. Chris to this finally says for him to stay put. Things are going to get resolved quickly with her there. Chris hadn't chosen to defend Dylan's innocence as such. Rather, she was smarter and managed to expose all the bribes and corruptions committed by District Attorney Leonard, obviously leading to his dismissal. After that, and a fair investigation where it was confirmed that Dylan had 0% to do with Joshua's criminal implications. But still, he couldn't avoid being punished for possessing a fake hero identification. Furthermore, with Chris's help, that problem also ended up being overlooked. While they were on the road, the news alerts that they had just sighted a new type of monster never seen before. A gigantic 50-meter mantis attacking civilians after coming out of the rift. "Ah, it must be an Amakassia," says Dylan, alerting Chris, who is surprised. How does he know about a new creature if nothing like it had ever appeared before? The only ones with that information were the high-ranking officials of the association. Monsters aren't named at random. Mana magic stones contain not only energy but also information. Analyzing them reveals things like the creature's names and other data about them. In this world, they use science to release this information from the stones. Whereas in the protagonist's previous world, these were solved with magic. Therefore, if the same type of beast appears in both worlds, and that means Dylan had already perfectly memorized each and every one of them and knows them all. So none are beyond his understanding. Dylan speaks saying that those monsters were extremely easy to kill with red ant extract. This was harmless to humans and potent poison for the Amakassia, leaving it heavily paralyzed. The best way is to throw it at them in gas form so they can't avoid it. Chris, now completely serious and worried, asks who Dylan really is. He doesn't answer anything immediately, making the girl even more agitated, thinking he was pretending to be deaf. Dylan asks, "If I go and kill the Lady Karen, what's going to happen?" Well, on the other hand, Karen is not happy with the protagonist's release. Agent Lee always accompanies her and thinks the situation finally got out of hand. Karen is cursing the name of the beautiful Chris. Lee tries to explain that absolutely no one had any idea of the relationship between Chris and Dylan. He doesn't even know when they met. Karen curses the heroine for getting involved when she was about to achieve her objective. She stands up asking how the hell it is that Dylan isn't a hero if he already obtained an awakening. Agent Lee has felt the old lady's fury and tries to argue that maybe the protagonist never really had an awakening. Or if he obtained one, he should have some ability that interferes with the association's scan. Karen, having had enough of this, points at Lee, ordering him to hire Paul, Pedro's cousin, to offer him 30 million euros, and to start the work immediately. Paul in his luxurious house laughs after having received such a proposal and asks his assistant to send a message asking for 60 million instead. His assistant asks if that wasn't too much. Paul corrects him because he doesn't understand anything. Paul mentions that right now the only option for that woman was to hire him. And in that case, it's not even a huge sum of money for her coming from billionaire families. And since Chris is mixed up in all this now, he'll have to fight another S-rank hero. Of course, he'll ask for more money. The assistant understands and agrees with him. That girl could turn out to be a very tough opponent. Slamming the table, Paul says he didn't understand anything. Did he think all S-ranks were equal? Paul says that finishing off Chris might take him barely 20 minutes. The guy apologizes for not having thought things through properly. Paul asks if the association had contacted them again about the mission they wanted to give him. And in fact, yes, the Heroes Association communicated that they wouldn't be able to increase the payment too much due to conditions in the United Kingdom. And for this reason, they were carefully selecting which heroes to send as support. This infuriates Paul because the money they offered him wasn't that great. Enough to travel to another country and solve their problems. He says that the real cheapskates always end up being others. The flight to the United Kingdom is going to depart in 3 days because they are preparing a trip alongside other heroes from other nations. Paul calms down because in this case he was going to see Take-Chai along the way, looking out his window. He stays thinking about the new creature discovered. It has no kind of weakness and is very difficult to kill. That means if he found a way, it would be very easy for him to become world news. Of course, he has no idea that Dylan already has that way. A great chaos broke out in the streets. Gigantic mantises ran all over the place, massacring innocent people. From the crowd emerges a handful of heroes who oppose the monster's advance. They aren't sure they can win, but being there already they should give their best. The mantises attack trying to impale the heroes and they dodge. 2 of them with all their strength respond by getting up while the third charges his attack. Concentrated on the ones above, the creature receives the hero's blow full-on, creating an opportunity to cut its head, falling dead. The heroes want to recover from the effort, but a sound makes them wonder how the hell they were going to survive without help. An attack falls on them, killing one of the heroes. The heroes of the United Kingdom were giving their all to prevent the monster's advance to the south. Having no information about the enemy, they were practically defenseless, while the defense lines in Cambridge were being totally annihilated. These bugs are only 60 kilometers from London. This army of monsters was practically unstoppable, of course, if it weren't because they were beginning to paralyze, causing them to fall like stone statues. From above a helicopter transporting the heroes, no one could believe it had worked. Miss Chris's idea had worked. The red ant extract worked perfectly. Those disgusting creatures were completely useless now. Paul wonders what the hell is happening. He didn't think the girl was so capable. Chris, happy, orders the others to begin the attack to finish off the monsters and save the city, everyone jumping into combat. At the airport, a large crowd waited with cameras and microphones. All the media awaited the return of the Spanish team. One of them mentions that, without a doubt, the MVP of the mission was the heroine Chris. Another agrees she had discovered the Amicasia's weakness. That would make her a true savior of the United Kingdom. What's more, according to rumors, the royal family is going to knight her. But without waiting any longer, the doors open, letting us see her with her victory walk. Without losing a single second, all the reporters begin asking how she discovered that information about the monsters. Several others called for Paul because he was also a great contributor, hunting the majority of these beasts. A live news report informs about the group of 200 heroes along with Chris and Paul. After that, Chris and Paul returned to their home country, Spain, along with the other 200 heroes. They received great attention for being known as Spanish heroes who saved the United Kingdom. The news broadcast begins to relay data about the Amicasia, which had become public knowledge. This was being watched by the protagonist, who walked calmly through downtown Madrid. Intrigued by the image of Paul, he remembers he would have to deal with that man too at some point. In a cafe was Dylan, wondering why they were giving him a gift. Chris explains that one was for the little sister and another for the protagonist's grandmother, the third for himself. Dylan takes the bag and begins to look inside, drawing Chris's attention for doing it in public. It turned out to be brand-name clothes. Chris mentions it's a small detail. After all, thanks to the protagonist these last few days, she was being recognized as a heroine on a global level. That clothing was nothing compared to everything she had received, and she offered to buy Dylan a car too. He mentions that no, it's not necessary, but he would let her know if he ever wanted one. And all this isn't necessary for him because she also helped him with the district attorney case, so they're even. Chris asks if he really isn't going to reveal how he had the information about the monsters. And no, he refuses to tell her anything because it's not necessary to say it. Chris asks, what's the plan from now on? Because being in the crosshairs of Karen and Paul, things will only get worse. First of all, I should buy a house, answers Dylan, because where he was living right now was being rented. At night during a party, Paul was completely beside himself, thinking about how Chris discovered the new monster's weakness. He notices something different about her compared to the past. Besides, the wretch hides how she discovered it. What confused him most was that, during the trip, Paul asked Chris what deal she has with Dylan. She says she has no idea what he's referring to or to whom. But questioning further, he reminds her that she exposed a corrupt district attorney for that boy, besides supporting him, and being present when Dylan beat up Pedro. Chris, annoyed, reminds him that it was his cousin who started the fight, accepting a murder contract against the young man. Paul laughs, saying his little cousin did something stupid. For little money, still he was family, therefore, he has his reasons for going after Dylan. This generates a change in Paul's gaze, but Chris, turning over to sleep, asks him not to drag her into his private matters. She didn't want to get wrapped up in family problems. This leaves the guy disappointed, thinking that maybe he confused things. Chris ends up saying that anyway these are things that don't have to do with her. At the party, Paul reflected on those words. What did she mean by not getting involved, by not intervening? It was strange. There was definitely an important mystery behind Dylan, in another area of England called Longston or something like that. This zone was evacuated a while ago with the appearance of a wave of monsters. After that, the Heroes Association sought to gather magic stones before the second wave broke out, and it was guarded by 2 heroes. One of them complains, mentioning that, if they had red ant extract, D-rank heroes like them would also be capable of killing the Amicasias. The other responds yes, the paralysis was very effective, but what bothers him is that a wave ended up coming out, because if a rift starts producing waves, it can no longer be turned into a gate by the association. Now the problem is that, according to rumors, another different monster will come out during the second wave. The hero speaks while looking at the rift. He had the feeling of being watched. Maybe it would be the heroes who were sent inside to close it, and they are returning quickly. His partner tells him that if that's the case, do his job and stand guard. Surely several civilians are going to come to try to get magic stones. Then as the rift opens, these 2 freeze. A large humanoid monster came out walking calmly, showing a tremendous and powerful aura. This wasn't one of the heroes sent. It didn't even seem human. They had to report it immediately. The creature raised its hand and, using a strange power, makes the heroes levitate. It advances, calmly causing desperation. One manages to pull out a small knife and throws it, but it's blocked with a green circle. "Too weak," says the monster, pressing its fists, causing the heroes to be twisted, damaging their internal organs. He uses his power, summoning a cell phone with a percentage on the screen. He wonders how it's possible that 10 years have passed in this world and that percentage hasn't even changed by 20%. I don't know what percentage that is. The monster thinks it was a complete failure. He went through several problems to create the dimensional rift, and he needed to obtain mana. One of the heroes had survived and tries to ask what the hell is happening. The entity speaks, "First, before obtaining mana, I should eliminate these weak creatures." Meanwhile, Dylan walked with his eyes closed. Very calmly, he's alerted by something. The ground was shaking. Some worms with too many teeth come out around the protagonist. He, seeing the holes they came out from, calculates that there are at least 26 worms in a 100-meter radius, saying, "Let's see how long they can survive this." He fires his mana. After a moment of waiting, multiple simultaneous explosions send all the monsters flying in pieces, while Dylan is happy seeing that none came out alive. In the Heroes Association building, we see Old Man Nath again, who is conversing with someone about what he thought of the boy. This is Ming, the vice director of the association, who responds that he seemed to be a rebellious young man. Old Man Nath asks if his power really couldn't be measured with the hero scanners. Ming responds that indeed, they have no idea what Dylan's true power was. The association's vice president says annoyed that that brat was too insolent. This is Spark, claiming that Dylan should answer all his questions without a single but. Old Man Nath stops him, saying they have more information, asking Ming what he found out. Ming comments that the case of Hero Pedro was because he tried to murder Dylan, locking him inside a rift, but against his plans, he ended up helping the boy awaken. Then the young man took revenge on Pedro after clearing by himself the rift that occurred where his grandmother was. Apart from that, they could see how he has a very confrontational personality, but there's no doubt he possesses extraordinary strength. Old Man Nath, after hearing this, realizes that Dylan was like a wild horse. However, he was a good horse anyway. After that, the boy requested an official job at the association. Nath asks if he had asked to be a manager, an executive member, or something like that. No, he requested to be an S-rank hero like Chris, clarifies Ming, thus surprising the 2 high-ranking officials of the association. We see Dylan finishing off the monster worms, seeing how with his new license he was named the 8th S-rank hero in all of Spain. It wasn't bad. Thanks to them, he can afford to move around the country freely and hunt wherever he wants in the rifts, laughing like a madman. Old Man Nath, because Dylan went straight to a rift to hunt after obtaining his license, thinks he's a very restless young man. Ming says the protagonist's combat ability was also exceptional. Spark reacts surprised. How is it possible that he went alone without equipment or a guild? No one is accompanying him in a second-grade rift. Is he crazy? Ming and Old Man Nath stayed serious without responding. Spark is discomforted by the silence. He therefore takes the opportunity to mention to the president that if Dylan returned alive, he had to reveal his identity and promote him so he becomes famous, since he was the country's 8th S-rank. Mr. Ming calms him down because maybe that's not what the young man wants. At the very least, he should ask him before doing anything. Spark tries to rebut this idea, because if at this moment they announced the appearance of another S-rank, people would feel safer regarding the monster threat. Thus asking for his opinion from the president, he responds that he understood both opinions. However, he would like to meet the young Dylan himself before making the decision. While the protagonist crushed another worm, from behind several more tried to hunt him, and upon feeling it, the protagonist turns slowly, preparing a powerful mana attack. Of fire attribute, enveloping his hand in flames, he performs an intense slash with his arm, splitting in that way all the monsters in the air. It's a rain of beast corpses. He, placing himself atop the mountain of bodies, stops using his mana, finally tired. He couldn't use such large amounts to fight in this form. He really needed to obtain a weapon. But there are no more chapters, and we're going to leave it here.